Hello, everybody. This is Brian Ankney with AutoSuccess, and I really appreciate you all taking the time to join us today. Today, my guest is Chase Abbott. He's a Vice President of Sales at VinSolutions. He's going to share with us some ideas on how to confidently select the right software solutions for your dealership today. But before we get started, a couple things I'd like to remind everybody of. If you're on a desktop or a laptop, it's going to be on the right side of your screen, and it'll say questions. If you have questions, please hit the plus mark next to that and type them in. Type them in as we go. Now, we are going to hold the questions till the end, but please type them in as we go, and that way you don't forget to ask them, and we can just get them in there. Now, if you're on a smartphone, depending on whether it's an Android or an Apple, it's either going to be at the top or the bottom of your screen when you hold your phone sideways in a landscape position, and you'll see a question mark. You hit the question mark, it pops up question, and then you go ahead and you type it in. Now, one other thing I'd like to remind everybody to do is, if you haven't yet, please join AutoSuccess webinars. It's a group on Facebook, and basically, if you go to the search bar on Facebook, you type in AutoSuccess webinars, it's going to bring it up as one of the groups. Click on there, ask to join. Now, once you're a member of AutoSuccess webinars, first of all, it's a great place to find out about future webinars. But beyond that, on just about every topic we cover on AutoSuccess webinars, they're really complex topics, and implementing these new ideas in your store is going to take multiple steps and probably weeks or months or even years. And as you undertake this change in your dealership, you're probably going to have great successes, but also great failures. And so as all the people on this webinar are undertaking these changes, please feel free to share your great successes or ask questions. If you've got a question 2 weeks from now and you need to get in touch with Chase, I'd be happy to make that happen for you. Well, Chase, let's get rolling, my friend. Take it away.
Awesome, Brian. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you to everyone that I know you guys are super busy out there and taking the time out of your day to learn a little bit more about this topic that I'm fairly passionate about. So the reason I'm passionate about it is I just don't think there's a lot of information out there in the industry today, which I've been in pretty much my entire life, about purchasing software for dealerships. There's just not a lot of info out there. Now, there's consultants and there's other ways to go get that data, but it's just general knowledge of what a deal should look like, or how should we approach this decision, or what's the best steps to take. And we're so focused in the automotive industry on how we're going to follow up with customers and that process that we don't spend enough time, in my opinion, on thinking about what's the next move for the dealership in the software arena. So again, thanks for taking the time out to learn a little bit more about it. And I just want to give you a little background on me and obviously why I think I'm fit to talk to you about this topic today. So I'm Chase Abbott. I'm the Vice President for VinSolutions. I started at VinSolutions at the very beginning of the company when it was just a little startup about 9 years ago. I have seen every phase of the software business, from just being a little bitty startup and having them ask me to wait to cash my paycheck the very first month I was here, to rocket ship sales, to extreme growing pains because of those sales, and ultimately figuring it out and working out to long-term sustainability. So before that, I spent 6 years on the retail side of automotive, working at a dealership group here in Kansas City, starting as a salesperson, and I've been through all the chairs: internet director, finance director, general sales manager. So seen a lot of every side of that business. So experience in both sides of them, has led me to my topic today, which is the ultimate playbook to purchasing the right software. And it's, like I said, it's something I really have a passion for. And I think, if you take the time and you look at it and you implement some good ideas, form a team or a committee of the right people and get, ultimate buy-in from your dealership representation, that, you can really feel good about the decision that you're going to make for your dealership and for your business. So the first question, is why is purchasing the right software is such a big decision? Because in today's market, it's one of the most impactful decisions that you can make for your dealership to determine whether at the end of the month you're coming up with a really good sounding list of excuses, or ultimately, that you're really successful. So our industry has evolved tremendously in the last 20 years, and we can be certain now that software isn't the wave of the future. In fact, it's completely the wave of the present. So a couple of things. Software. We know it costs money. That one we know well. We also know that it's time consuming and it takes some time to implement. We also know that it encompasses change and it gets everybody in your dealership marching to the same beat in a lot of instances. Depending on the software piece you're buying, it could affect different departments here or there, but it definitely encompasses change, and that's tough with any dealership in my experience. So by getting the right kind of buy-in, I think you can really mitigate that. It affects everyone in a lot of instances at the dealership in most cases. It also, in a lot of software pieces, it drives accountability. It holds people accountable, which drives efficiency is the end result there. So some people like that, some don't. A good piece of software will let you know which one you're dealing with in your dealership. Interesting fact here, 52% of business-to-business buyers said that the biggest risk of getting a purchase wrong is wasting the company's money. That says to me that you have no process. That says to me that you're easily swayed on what you're going to do with software. Maybe it's a price-driven decision solely, and you're trying to find the cheapest solution out there. But that's alarming to me, and I think that would be something that would be a lot less of a problem if you implemented a good process and approached this tactfully. So why is purchasing software a tough decision? It takes some time to research, and it does. There's no getting around it. If you want to make sure that you feel good about the decision you're making and that you've checked all your boxes, it's going to take some time. You have to have the desire to spend the time. It is so important, and you got to know that going in. There are a lot of choices. If any of you on the call went to NADA or Digital Dealer a couple weeks ago, like I was in Vegas, you can be overwhelmed by the amount of vendors out there in the space today, and they all do great things, right? And they all provide a big benefit in most cases, but it's whether or not that resonates with you and your culture and your staff, right? So there's a lot of choices you got to go through, which in turn takes time. Staff turnover. Okay, so let's face it, our industry is synonymous with this one, and some dealerships are just a revolving door, constantly shuffling in salespeople, shuffling out managers, clean sweep when they bring in a new GM, whatever it is. So some dealerships, with that revolving door, nothing will impede the software usage march like turnover, right? So keep that in mind. If your dealership's in a state of flux right now, it may not be the best time to bring on a new solution. You got to take a look at that, a real hard look at it. It's obviously a tough decision because price is involved. There's a couple of questions that usually come of this. How much do I spend? Did I get a good deal on it? There is no true car for software, so you kind of got to do the research to figure that one out. How do I measure if the tool's making me money? How do I measure if it's making them accountable? And then obviously the last one, which I hear still all the time, it's not a priority. We're too busy. They won't use it. They don't use it now. And my ultimate favorite, we didn't need to sell software, or we didn't need software to sell cars back in my day, which is the old dinosaur talking. But they're still out there. I still run into them from time to time. Why do we need software? Two big reasons I can attribute this to. Now you can go into multiple rabbit holes on this one, but two big reasons. Number one is compliance, right? Leads expect a response. Customers 100% expect data security. Lenders expect the contract you send them to be accurate. Dealers expect profits, none of which, require a paper and a pencil any longer, right? So compliance and making sure that the efficiencies and doing what you say you're going to do, following up with leads, getting back with people, is going to be there. The second reason is ROI, right? We're going to spend some money on this. We're going to hold people accountable. We're going to drive efficiency. And ultimately, we hope that improves our customer experience. It improves the way we price cars. It improves the look and feel of our website, the SEO of our website, whatever it is, to have simply a return on your investment. How can we know what success looks like if we have no way to measure our results? And that's where software comes in. How much should we put into the trade? Can we provide a better customer experience? How can we set ourselves apart from the competition down the street saying the same thing? One answer for all those questions, and that is software. So before we get into the playbook and the 7 steps, I wanted to just touch base real quick on the 4 common software buying mistakes that I see in the industry. We do a lot of deals in my business. I have a huge sample size to go on for this. And see, some of these are the most common mistakes I see out there in the industry today. Mistake 1 is rampant in the industry, and that is simply not digging deep enough. I often see dealers asking many great questions during presentations, but some are guilty of just not digging deep enough and really finding the solution that checks all of the dealership's boxes, not the boxes that the vendor wants you to see. So you've got to dig deeper. You've got to go in and say, does it do this? Okay, vendor says, yeah, it does that. Okay, great. How many clicks does it take to do that? Is it a process in which I'm going to lose buy-in because it takes 9 clicks, where the other vendor I've looked at, it takes 1 click or 2 clicks? And you've got to get down to that level of granularity and dig deep. You will thank me later. Trust me. So, number 2, emotional decision making. Simply put, pressure affects decisions and relationships. One time I ended up at the ballet on a Friday night with my wife because I made an emotional decision. And it worked out, but at the same time, I don't think I would have been there without that pressure, right? So don't let it affect it in this arena. The only pressure you should feel is the pressure to make the right decision on your software solution set, and knowing that you're doing the right thing and taking the right steps to feel good about that decision. Mistake number 3. Too customizable is daunting, right? So in all actuality, the more customizable, the better. You have to progress through the road to the sale your way. It cannot be forced. If it is forced due to a lack of technology or customization, then I guarantee you usage of that tool will plummet because it won't allow you to do what you want to do. And you're square peg and round hole, and that's the difference that you've got to look for when you're coming up with these purchasing decisions for software, and can they really do what I need it to do? It may seem daunting at the beginning of the sales process because there's a lot of settings or things to kind of dial in, but as you become a power user of whatever piece of software you're using, you'll really thank yourself later for taking that on, because it'll allow you to customize it and adapt it to your business. Therefore, usage and engagement will increase. Keep in mind, simplicity does not equal adoption. If it's too simple, I guarantee you that salespeople won't use it because it won't allow them to do what we need it to do. And with more millennials coming into the workspace, they are very well trained on technology. I'm a millennial myself, and I can tell you that you better have your inside game right when it comes to your internal solutions and tools, because if there's a lot of head scratching or frustration, you'll lose a millennial quicker than anybody. Because it's not state-of-the-art, and they're used to state-of-the-art. Flexibility. With ultimate flexibility comes ultimate complexity, right? So if we want to be flexible, it's going to be a complex system, probably. But it allows for customizing the solution on whatever it is you're doing or purchasing, and then allowing you, because of that customization, to adapt to it, and then ultimately to grow your business. And is growth not the reason we're all doing this every day anyway? I mean, to grow our business? I mean, no one running a business says their goal is just to keep their head above water. I mean, flexibility is as important in software as it is in negotiations. If both sides aren't flexible in a negotiation, it's going to be pretty hard to find a common ground in that deal. And same thing applies here. It needs to be able to adapt and change a little bit because it's different strokes for different folks, and we need to be able to accommodate those whenever possible. Mistake number 4, adapting your process to your software. Okay, so I hear this one a lot, right? So dealer says, hey, I want to do it this way. Vendor says, no, we do it this way, but here's the best practice. Here's a case study of why we think it's better to do it this way, and you end up adapting your process to that software. We're at a point in automotive software now that you really don't have to settle for this a whole bunch. So don't make it a siege of settling to accommodate whatever software tool you're looking at because they've got the cheapest price or whatever it may be, right? Because the reason you're buying this isn't for the vendor to tell you how to sell cars. You know how to sell cars. You have to find a tool that accommodates that, and allows you to grow inside of it and really do some cool and relevant things as they pertain to your dealership and your culture. So instead, your software should adapt to your process. You should find a solution set out there, whatever it is, whatever piece of software you're looking at, that can cater or dovetail into what you want to do. And it's so important, because if it's forced, like I said earlier, you're just not going to have the engagement and the usage that you want. So whenever possible, buy flexibility, buy customizable solutions so that you can grow with it, and it's not just one piece of software that stays antiquated and stagnant. You got to be able to grow with that, because times are changing. We don't sell cars today the same way we did 5 years ago. It's completely different. So you need a vendor that's going to grow with you in that regard. So with that, we'll get rolling into the playbook to purchasing the right software. So 7 steps, make it real easy that you guys can form, a committee is the first one, right? So forming a committee is so important. I see so many times where the dealer principal or the general manager will task usually the internet manager or internet director with this task. Instead of a committee, they'll say, hey, Mr. Internet Manager or Mrs. Internet Manager, go find the best solutions out there, and I want you to narrow them down to 2, and then come to me with the proposals, and we'll figure out the price. So it completely rides on this person, whoever it may be, to do it. And that's the position I don't want if I'm that person. If I'm an internet man, I don't want to stick my neck out and say, this is exactly what I think we need to do, because you'll have a host, you'll have another committee of people saying that you made the wrong decision, right? So you got to get ahead of that. You got to form a committee before the committee forms against you, if you're the person in charge of this decision, or at least fact-finding and narrowing it down, and form a committee. Why do we do a committee, right? Very simple. You got to engage your staff and start thinking who should be a part of this committee and how it affects that software. So if it's one specific piece of software, you may not need the parts manager. You may not need the service director. You may not need, the finance guy or girl. So make sure you start thinking about where this software piece is going to lie and who it's going to affect and which departments, to think about who should be on the committee for said software tool. So weigh in on options. Give members a chance to discuss what's important to them and their department, so that they have buy-in in it, so that they got those opinions out there, so that you could consider them, or that everyone could consider them before you ultimately make a decision. It ultimately creates a sense of ownership. In order for someone to get behind anything, in my experience, they need to own at least part of the idea. So you've got to create a sense of ownership so that you have buy-in, even if it's a facade, even if you've got to sell it a little bit, right? You've got to make everybody feel like they're a part of it at the end of the day, so that this thing takes flight and so that it works. And then it gains buy-in to ensure, the usage of the tool going forward, and to improve the culture by purchasing a software piece, to make it easier, to make it more efficient to work there, to make it better, to put more smiles on people's faces instead of frowns day in, day out. A committee will help with all those things when it comes to this topic. Collaboration is so key. Not collaborating and not getting everyone's input will have a negative outcome, I guarantee it. They will form a committee against you, like I said, if you do not gain buy-in from everybody inside of the dealership where this software decision is going to affect. No buy-in always leads to poor adoption, which leads to lower ROI. And look, most of these software tools, like I said earlier, we're buying for some kind of ROI. I mean, we're not buying glass cleaner for the detail bay, okay? So everything that you do, everything that you put in there is to come back on some kind of return on investment. But you've got to be right from the first step, or the last step will always be wrong, right? So keep that in mind. No buy-in is so key, and you almost got to do as much work to make sure that that happens as you do in finding the right solution. So a lot of times dealers will ask me, who should be on a committee? And there's no clear-cut answer there. Like I said, it depends on the different software pieces for the different, different spaces of the dealership or different departments. But this is a great place to start, right? A new car manager, used car manager, internet director, GM or GSM, whichever, salesperson, parts, potentially if it affects that department, service, and then a lot of times a controller, or office manager, whatever, will be involved in it from a financial aspect or something like that. So those are good places to start. One other tip I'll give you, don't forget about this one. This happens a lot. They don't bring in the salespeople. And they're a lot of times in these software pieces out there, sometimes they're the heaviest user of the system. So you got to make sure that you bring them in. So don't bring in the 40-car guy that takes 3-hour lunches and does what he wants. That's probably not the best person. But if you've got any guys or gals on your team that are tenured and provide consistent results, consistent deliverables every single month, those are typically the best people for the committee, because they understand the tools, they've got the tenure, they're there every day, you can rely on them. But don't forget about the salesperson, really, really crucial there. So you got to let everyone have a voice. And what's a way that you can do that? You know, there's a couple different ways. Number one, some dealers will do a comment box where they say, okay, tell me everything that you don't like about our current solution and tell me everything you wish the next solution did, and they would fill them out and they drop in the comment box. So everybody feels like they had at least a say in something, right? And you can do that. 100% of the staff can do that. So a comment box is a good way to do it. In our digital age today, the best, most efficient way to me is to send out like a survey monthly or whatever. There's plenty of sites you can go to for this, and craft a survey and send that out to get everyone's feedback, and then you can kind of guess and see where you know, your store's at currently based off of all that feedback. But more importantly, it lets everybody feel like they had a voice. And then sometimes an all-hands meeting. The only issue with all-hands meetings is some people won't talk because there's other people in the room, so keep that in mind. This is still a great way to do it, and I recommend that you do it to just kind of let everyone hear that collaboration as it starts. Maybe that's the number one thing you do, and then you go into a survey or a comment box after that so people can kind of share their real feelings and not worry about what the group might say, you know, when everybody hears their answers. So step number 2, know your end game, right? You have to begin with the end in mind. After I buy, you know, how will they support me? What level of support is standard? Is there someone tied to my account that is responsible for my success with this? Or do you sell it and ride off into the sunset? Which is it? Those are questions you've got to ask. Okay, so if you're looking at software right now, make sure you're asking these questions. You know, and you also got to think, hey, what's my responsibility, you know, as a dealer? You know, how can we ensure the success of the solution and we're not just spinning our wheels? How can I make sure the staff uses it? You know, I think you should hold at least monthly meetings, and if not, maybe monthly, at the worst quarterly meetings to make sure and discuss the software solutions and their level of effectiveness and also the level of usage that you're getting with them. I mean, you've got to do a progress report on those things to make sure that you're still getting traction, because if you're not, then cancel it. I mean, why have it if you're not going to use it and it's not going to do what it's supposed to do for you? And then ultimately, you know, what's the vendor's responsibility too? You got to think about that side of it. Do they update? This is a big one. Does the vendor update their stuff? Do they update the software to keep me on the cutting edge and ahead of my competition? You know, is the platform stable and reliable? What's their uptime? Am I going to have issues on Saturday at 10 o'clock? That's a problem. I got to ask about that, right? We got to know and see how those compare. And then another one to think about, especially in this day and age, is what are the vendors' plans for the future? Where are they going? What kind of integrations do they have? How well does this dovetail into what I'm currently doing? Because it could be that, you know, you buy a piece of software and then you figure out after the sale that it doesn't integrate with 2 of the pieces of software that you love. Well, if you would have known that ahead of time, you could have gotten in front of it and made a little bit better decision probably for the long term of the dealership. So those are great questions to ask in this, you know, kind of what's nirvana for me in the dealership at the end of this road. So some of the things you're going to want to identify when you do this is, you know, what's my current usage now? Do we have a usage issue? Are we just reskinning a people problem? That happens all the time, where the manager's been doing deals for 30 years up there, and he just or she just knows how to do the deal, and they're not going to use it. I challenge you to go fire that person, because you're never going to grow. Everybody's got to get on board with these things, and everybody's got to move, or we're going to get left behind. I love the quote where if Henry Ford would have asked all the people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. So you've got to evolve, right? You've got to, or you're going to get left behind. So don't reskin a people problem. Take care of the people problem, then go buy software. Vendor shortcomings. Write down a list of all the things you wish your current solution did. And what's the heartburn right now? And what's that look like? And identify that. Keep that list. You're going to use it later. Holes in the process. Reflect on your current road to the sale. I mean, is it what you want now? What needs to be changed? How customizable is that? And figure out how the software pieces fit into that window. You're also going to want to identify the future state, right? So software requirements. Do we need to update our computers? Do we need to finally get off dial-up, right? Something like that. You know, there probably is a dealership out there still on dial-up, I'm sure. But what other requirements does the vendor have, right? Browser settings, you know, operating systems, OSs. What do I have to be on? Does it work with a Mac? Those are kind of things that you're going to want to ask there to make sure that you're surprised when you log in for the first time after you go live with the tool. And then realistic expectations for processes. I mean, dreaming is great, but not every vendor can accommodate what you dream up. So find a vendor that gets the closest and make sure you dig deep to explain that no, explain that yes for me. Budget. What's our budget now? What do we spend now on the current solution? And is budget or ROI potential driving this decision? You know, which one is it? How much do we expect to increase it for a new solution? You know, you've got to think about those things and establish a baseline so that you can see what the contrast looks like with the new tool. Please do not make a snap decision for time or any other reason. Don't. It will echo for too long. It is not worth it. Like I mentioned before, you've got to identify if you have a software or people problem. You may need to really evaluate the staff, especially the key members that will work with this solution the most. And if they don't use the current solution to the best of their ability, then you got to shift personnel probably first. Could other vendors have the same shortcomings, right? So once you identify the shortcomings in your current solution from the last step, make sure that you run all those by the prospective vendors that you're looking at. Nothing worse than going live on a new solution that doesn't accomplish the things that made you pull your hair out on the last one, right? But you can't do that unless you have that list, because you're not going to remember everything when it comes to demo time, trust me. So write them down and make sure that you know what they are. You've got to know your dealership. Master your unique selling proposition. So what's that? A USP, right? So that's what separates you from your competition. What makes the customer come to your store versus the next Ford store or the next Chevy store or the next Toyota store? Is it great prices? Is it concierge service? Is it the location? Are we right next to the Ford assembly plant? I want to market, if I'm next to the Ford assembly plant, I want to market to my customer base different than if I'm 500 miles away, simply put. So you need to identify those things and make sure that you know what makes you sizzle in front of a customer to get them to come into your store. Look for a tool that can help complement these things and get them out there and market to the masses, whatever the tool may be, whether it's price, whether it's email templates, whatever it is. Make sure that you can identify those things and also convey them to the customer. What's the best way to make sure that people know these differences you work so hard to create? I mean, does the solution help with that convey to the customer, or does it make it more difficult? Become more relevant. Like, it's no mystery that today's customer demands relevancy. If a customer gets an offer and it's an irrelevant one, it does more harm than a relevant offer does good. So keep that in mind. If you send them something that doesn't pertain to them at all and you try to be tactful and make it that way, then it's going to do a ton of harm. So find a solution that can make you cater to the customer and make them feel a little bit more warm and fuzzy than just getting the old standard autoresponder that we're all used to, right? You've got to become more relevant. And then find an efficient automated tool. Whenever in doubt, please buy automation, especially in automotive. People will forget. There will be balls that will be dropped. There will be mistakes daily. A great piece of software will help minimize these things via automation. So whenever in doubt, buy automation. It will help you tremendously in making sure that nothing falls through the cracks and the customer experience doesn't suffer. And provide a relevant, consistent customer experience, and that process is driving all of that. So think of this from end to end. In your mind, become the customer and work through each step of the sale. visualizing yourself in this role at the dealership will help you to identify the small things on the customer experience path that can sometimes turn into really big things if it gets out of hand, right? Because you want to provide that consistent experience where everybody's having a good time, everybody feels like they're heard and they're taken care of, and ultimately that you don't take 4 hours to do a car deal, right? You've got to be timely. Nothing more kills deals, in my experience in the car business, than time, taking too long. Step number 3, set your budget. So a couple of things that you want to look out for are hidden costs. And I don't know if I call them hidden necessarily, but let's just say they're not in lights, okay? Integration, right? So a lot of vendors will charge integration fees to integrate with this company or to integrate with DMS or integrate with this company or this website, whatever. You need to ask and see if there's any third-party integration fees, any DMS fees, so that you're not surprised after the fact, right, or when you get the proposal, something you got to look at. Not only that, not only the cost, but what type of integration, what level of integration, because that is the theme of the business, I think, this year is integration. Used to be big data, and now I think we've moved into integration and eliminating the amount of time it takes to do a deal. And if you have to enter a customer information or customer first name 6 times to do a deal, then you got to look at your process. You got to. There's way better ways to do it. Overages. Call tracking providers, they charge overages on minutes like a cell phone plan. Some are software tools are user-based, and you only get X amount of users and more or cost more money. So you've got to look for those overages. If you're looking at a website, then you need to ask about design time and creative artwork, because the template that they allow you to pick may not be the one that you want. You need the colors changed. You need this logo over here, and the call to action button's different. You've got to make sure that you get ahead of that, because nothing worse than paying the bill, going live, and then the first month you get hit with another big bill because to get it to what you thought it was already at, right? So you got to get ahead of it. And then mentioned a little bit about this per user. Some have a per user fee, and you got to know how they handle this part, if nothing else. How many do I get allowed? Is there more? How much is the additional ones? Is it unlimited users? Whatever it is. Just make sure you identify those things. 65% of organizations do not have a predefined budget when selecting software. Well, that's crazy to me. That's wild, wild west, right? So you've got to sit down and figure out what this looks like, not just from a feature and benefit standpoint, but also from a cost aspect. Have that in mind as you approach this. This one I see all the time. Don't base your budget on your current spend. I see a lot of dealers doing this. If the current solution isn't working for you or your dealership, or it's full of holes, it's really hard to believe that you're going to find a better solution for the same price. So vendors know where they excel, and they know how big the delta is between them and their competitors. So you truly do get what you pay for in this space. So don't just think because you spend X on a website now that you can go find another better website to accomplish all the things you hate about your current one for the same money. It's just not the case, right? You've got to dig a little bit deeper there and internally and make sure that you're not doing that, because you're doing this for ROI. This is not a fixed thing, okay? It's an ROI play. Budgeting resources. So dealers asking, well, where can I go find, what I should spend on this particular piece of software, right? So here are some resources that you can go to or use to help you kind of identify what the budget should be for your size of store. 2 different ways. Structured being the first one. There are a lot of consultants out there in the market today who have really in-depth experience with different choices available to dealers today. So you can lean on them, and maybe you already use one for your dealership. They can be a lot of help in these areas. Sister dealers is a great place to look, to get knowledge. I mean, maybe you have a sister store that's already on the solution that you're looking at, and you can see their bill and know what they pay, and what's the price point for what products. Can we go to the store and see it in action? That's a great way to get a budgeting resource from looking at your sister dealers. 20 groups, I'm sure a lot of dealers on this call are in 20 groups. This is the whole point of them. It allows the dealers to discuss, the findings, the different solutions available out there. Really, really good info can come from these. So, and then also unstructured. There's a ton of good data on the internet forums. A couple of them you probably know. Dealer Refresh Driving Sales. There's a lot of good information on there. Take a look around, kind of see what the buzz is in the industry. Or there'll be dealers on there posting their past experience with different tools, and you can kind of get some good data from that, and ultimately some budget stuff too. So good places to go for resources on budgeting. Step number 4, survey the landscape. Okay, so we kind of know our budget. We've got the committee form. We've got all that. We kind of know what our end game looks like. Now we're going to survey the landscape. We're going to see what's out there. So ask around. You know, other dealers, sister dealers, current employees, that one's forgot a lot. So they'll say, you know, with turnover being such a big deal in our industry, there's probably a salesperson on your staff that's used the tool, or a used car manager that used the tool 2 dealerships ago, right? So make sure you survey and ask around. There's probably somebody on there that has some first-hand experience with it. 420 groups is a great place to get just kind of knowing who's out there. This is social proof, okay? This is the social proof step. Ask around. What do you use it? Do you like it? What don't you like about it? Not necessarily about the budgeting, but about their experience and the ROI potential, and the length of time as a customer is important, right? Their tenure, how long have they stayed on? And consult the online forums, and I put in parentheses with a grain of salt, right? Because, I mean, there's lots of great data on these sites, but proceed with caution. Keep your view here at about 10,000 feet. I mean, every vendor has customers that love them, and every vendor has customers that hate them. So keep that in mind as you look through this data and take it with a grain of salt. Nobody's got 100% reviews on any product I've ever seen. If they are, I think it's false, right? So you've got to make sure that you do that with a grain of salt. Review the vendor websites. I don't think we're doing this enough in automotive, right? Go to their website and look around. Spend some time on it and see how they present themselves, and see how they sell themselves, and see how they, you know, bring it to market. What's their go-to-market strategy? What's the competitive differences that they display on their website? I mean, you can learn a lot if you just go to the site and see spend a bit of time. You'll see a bit of contrast there if you spend a little time just browsing. So you're going to want to narrow down the results from there based off kind of what you hear out there in the market, and you'll identify who's reputable really quick. And after you've done your research, specify the reputable ones that you found, and you may need to meet with the committee again here to make sure the selection process or narrowing, if you will, is valid for all team members, right? So this is another spot where you may need to meet with the committee again to just kind of make sure everybody's on the same page here with who we pick for the final 2 or final 3 or whatever it is. Get a demo, step number 5. Contact and make a plan to set up online overviews, or a lot of vendors will do in-store presentations for you as well. Those tend to work a little bit better because you get more of a captive audience than just doing a webinar or whatever. So figure out which one works best for your store. Vendors should be able to accommodate either way. A bit of advice on this particular step is schedule your demos close together if at all possible. I say this because I speak to dealers who, by the time they get through all of them, they basically forgot what the first vendor offered or what the key differences were. So, taking great notes or even recording the demo will go a long way once it gets to decision time. Most vendors, by the way, they can record the online overview or demo for you and send you the file. You just have to ask. Also, it's very realistic to think that you may need to do 2 or even 3 demos with the same vendor to really get a full understanding of that solution and build off the last demo. I mean, as you navigate through these products, you'll become more educated on the different ones available to you, and new questions will spawn because of those findings. So keep that in mind when you're scheduling those things out. During the demo, look for the things you want. Have your data ready. All that stuff we compiled at the beginning of this process, have it ready and be prepared to dig deep. Remember the documented criteria you had. Keep in mind what you got to do with this decision and the core values you're trying to put in place. Don't get caught up in the bells and whistles. Bells and whistles can be very accommodating, and some of them do really get used, but don't make them the main course. Keep them as a side dish, right? I don't want you to get distracted by this one thing this one tool does and be blinded to the 8 things it doesn't because you were so in love with the sizzle provided by that one piece. So make sure you encompass the whole decision and not focused on one little bitty thing that you think would really drastically improve your quality of life at the dealership. Ask really specific questions. All the work you did at the beginning, what you want to be as a dealership, the shortcomings in your process, the holes in the current solution, the customer experience we want to put forward, all comes into play here. Be specific and explain the no, explain the yes, right? Make sure you're asking those things to figure out it's not just as simple as a no or yes in software. And I see that a lot. So make sure you're explaining the no, explaining the yes. I think you'll get a lot further and have a real clear understanding of what you're buying. Remember, don't ask what it can do. Ask what it can do for my dealership. How does this resonate to my culture and my store? So make sure you're asking those, how would I use that? What does this do for my customer experience? Are good places to kind of start with that. Questions to ask. Will the vendor disappear after the sale, right? So how are they going to support me at going forward? Definitely something that you need to know. Is the solution, you know, a scalable one? Does it evolve? Is it on the cutting edge, right? If it's server-based, then, you know, that's going to be tough because servers are hard to update, right? So web-based, you know, anymore is kind of the standard in our industry because web-based tools, web-based solutions can be updated often, easily. So keep that in mind. Is it scalable? Contracts, right? So a lot of vendors out there still write contracts. So am I being asked to sign a 12-month, a 24-month, a 60-month, a 72-month, whatever? I need to know what the contractual obligations are. Some vendors out there, and a lot of them more and more today, are doing no contract, right, or a 30-day out. So you really just need to identify which ones you're looking to go into. Will the software integrate with, you know, my existing system, my existing base? So how well does the solution that's in the lead work with your current solutions? Because if it doesn't, then you may need to now buy 2 software solution sets because you're so married to the new one, you may have to change the one that you're lukewarm about that's currently installed that you hadn't planned on changing anyway, right? So you've got to identify the integration points and figure out, you know, road to the sale workflow from meet and greet all the way to delivery, how that looks for you and how well these tools are going to cater to that. Another big one that gets left out quite often, how easy is it to get somebody trained on this particular piece of software? If I bring in somebody new that's going to use this, how do I go about doing that? Is there live trainings online? Is there recorded trainings online? Is somebody come into my store and train me? How do I get somebody up to speed? That is the vendor's responsibility. So you have to make sure that you know what that looks like for you and for that vendor. And then last but not least, you know, how are the updates managed? How often do they come out? Please ask the vendor you're looking at how often they do updates, right? Because nothing is the same as it was last year. And you've got to keep that in mind. Whoever's going to keep you on the cutting edge, that's going to be the difference. That's going to be the difference between the person down the street selling the same car with the same sticker price. It's going to break down to the customer experience and keeping you on that cutting edge and providing tools that are going to allow you to have an edge on the competition via technology. So make sure you ask, how often do you update? Is that consistent? How many updates have you done in the last year? All good questions to ask. And then step number 6, you're going to want to evaluate, right, and figure out, based off of everything you gathered on what you want your dealership to look like, and you know what's nirvana for you, and then based off the demos that you've got done, the pricing or proposals you may have been sent at this point, you know, evaluate all of that data. And you're going to want to identify your top 3 systems, okay? Typically 3, you could do 2 or 4, I guess, but typically 3 is usually what I see when it comes down to it. They're looking at, you know, 3 different solutions at the end. Remember your criteria sheet, right? Best solution for the culture and staff. Remember price versus budget, right? What do we want to spend versus, you know, what we pay now? What are the contractual obligations? That's huge. You do not want to, you know, get into something that's 5 years worth of term and you weren't aware of it. Now you've locked the dealership in for 5 years. Not a good move. Make sure you're ahead of that game on that, especially on that. And then the support offer after the sale, always been an issue in automotive software, but companies out there have gotten a lot better with this. But make sure you identify how they do it and how they offer it and what's the benefit for you as the user or the end user. And then step number 7, you're going to want to make a decision or call the ball, right? Put all this good data that you've got to work. So you'll compile everything that you have, right? You want to talk about your notes, everything that you've had from the demos. You may want to go review the recorded demos that you've had done. You're going to review any sales material that they may have, handed out to you or emailed you. during the process. This may be another time where you want to review the websites again just to kind of get, their go-to-market strategy and see how they present themselves and really what feels the best. And then you're going to want to compile the pricing. That's a big step in this part of it. And see, based off of who we like the best on the, setting price aside, who do we like the best, and then put price into the mix, and then who do we like the best, right? So it's a huge impactful thing, pricing on any decision, but keep in mind you're doing this for ROI. So don't just go find the cheapest solution out there. There's a reason that it costs that much. There is. So just keep that in mind when you go look at different solutions. Consult your committee. So you're going to want to bring everybody back in for this, right? Block out at least an hour or two on everybody's calendar. I recommend that you bring in lunch. Whatever you need to do to get engagement in this meeting, it's very crucial. So you're going to want to get everybody together, roll through all of the data, and let everyone have a chance to speak again and voice their opinion. Okay, John, what did you like about that part? But Sandy, what did you like about this part of the demo? And kind of have an open forum discussion with the committee about what needs to be done. If you're the administrator, which I feel like I'm talking to a lot of you on this call that's going to be leading this charge, make sure you make it a point to go around the room and let everybody talk. And let everybody have a voice, because what you're going to do is when they give you pushback on this tool in 4 to 5 months, and it'll happen, then you're going to go back and you're going to cite this instance, and you're going to say, hey, do you remember that meeting when we talked about this and everybody signed off on it, you were there, you said this, and it's pretty hard for that person to say, throw their hands up and say, well, I wasn't involved in it, I don't know, I just got it delivered to me. That can't happen, so you've got to do the takeaway close, right, and get ahead of it. Gain the buy-in and make a decision. Go around the room, like I said, get everybody's argument, counter-argument. Some people will vote at this stage. That's a real democratic way to do it. That's great, just to kind of see where everybody lies. Others, the dealer principal or the general manager will kind of make the decision after listening to everyone's opinion. Just remember to make everyone feel like they're part of it. This is crucial in the final step. It will echo for a while, I guarantee it. So just keep that in mind. And then remember, all software that you could purchase out there today is completely useless without users. So when you buy software, the user discussion has to come first, okay? So keep that in mind, not just the sizzle, the feature, oh, wow, look what it can do. It does not matter if it doesn't get used, okay? So one tip I'll make sure you take away from this presentation is that one. Think about your people and think about what that looks like when you buy software. It's so important. And then just a quick recap, right? So we're going to want to form the committee and get everybody involved, feel like they've got a seat at the table. We're also going to want to know your end game and kind of begin with the end in mind and know what you want your dealership to look like post-software purchase, even after the initial training maturity. What's that look like for us? What do we want to be? And that's basically what you're doing with that is setting a measuring stick. And it has to be done, or you're just kind of just up there flying around, not knowing if you're doing good or doing bad. So you've got to set the baseline. Set your budget. Gain all the different resources, talk to them, see what they're spending, what this looks like. There's tons of resources for that, but know your budget and don't base it on your current spend if the current spend sucks. Don't do it. Survey the landscape. See what's out there. Go get the social proof. Who's using what? How much do you like it? Is it great? Is it bad? How long you had it? And kind of see what's reputable out there in the market. Get your demo. Get your in-store presentation. Be thorough. Ask a lot of questions. Be prepared for that, because it is one of the most impactful decisions you can make for your dealership in today's market. It really is. And then evaluate. Take all that data. Put it all back together. Make sure that you use it when it comes time for the last step, which is make a decision. So get everybody's buy-in, get all that info together, and then ultimately call the ball and make a decision. And make one that you can feel good about, right? And that's the difference, right? Because if you don't do any of this work, you're going to make a rash decision that may or may not be the one you should have. And what you can't live with is regret. Okay, so if you do, some of these steps and get behind and get everybody's buy-in, you can really limit the amount of regret that you'll feel in making this decision, because it is a very impactful one in most instances in today's dealership. So with that, I'll turn it over for questions. And thanks again to everyone who took the time out to listen to my spiel today. And hopefully you got something out of it. I really do hope you did. And I'll be available for questions. And my email's listed there. My cell phone number is on there as well. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Brian.
Great job, Chase. This is Brian Ankney again with AutoSuccess. We've got some questions for you. How do I know it's the right time to start looking for new software?
I think you can only really know that is if you're constantly evaluating your current state. So I call them State of the Unions, so does the President, so we're kind of the same in that one, but you should have a State of the Union once a quarter, at least once a quarter. Some dealerships I know, the real progressive ones, they'll do it once a month. And constantly be evaluating, where you're at and what's working and what's not, right? And so that way if everybody's checking the boxes and everybody feels really good and the store's doing well and hitting objectives and targets, and you don't have a ton of complaints in the complaint department about those tools, then you're probably fine. Nobody says you constantly have to be purchasing software. It's just that you constantly have to be evaluating it and making sure that it's the right move for you, because the next guy down the street, he could buy a piece of software that's more cutting edge than the one you have. Maybe it gets updates twice as often, and they're really ahead of you on how they price their cars. Then you're not going to get as many leads as you should. And that ultimately affects everyone in the dealership. Whether or not you log into that tool or not, the bottom line affects a lot of people. So the only way you can know it's time to buy software or time to look at it is if you're constantly diagnosing and measuring your current solution.
All right. Which person on the committee should be the software admin?
This one is, from dealership to dealership could be different. Most of the time, it is the internet director. And that director meaning there's multiple stores. If not, if it's one store, it's the internet manager. They're usually the best admins because they understand the tools the best, typically. Now, if you're buying, a tool to put values on used cars or something, then probably the used car manager, right? Because that's their world and they're living in it. So it can be specific to the piece of software that you're buying. If it's a website, it may be your IT folks. It just depends on the solution. But collectively, I would say the internet director, at least in our systems, is far and away the person that's going to be the admin more often. Just because they understand the tools, because they're on tools all day, they're on software all day, so they understand it, as to where other people are just bouncing around the store or writing four squares on pen and paper, So.
All right. How do I measure ROI from using my software?
Okay, that's a tougher one, right? So ROI, can boil down to really simple things. Like I bought, X amount of leads and I spent $21 a lead and I made this. That's really clear-cut ROI. Some of these tools are not going to allow you that. They're going to allow you to provide a better customer experience. They're going to allow you to take out the amount of time it takes to do a deal. It may take you from entering a customer's first name to do a car deal 6 times down to 1 or 0. And what's that worth, right? What's your time worth? It's hard on some of these to do. Now, some of them are very black and white, but you got to keep in mind the solution or tool that you're looking at. If it's buying leads, that's very easy. But if it's a CRM or website, it may be much harder to quantify the exact ROI. Now, there's different ways you can do it, but if you start with a baseline on your staff, like if you do that survey I talked about earlier and kind of diagnose the culture in the store, you can do another survey to show contrast after the tool's been live 6 months, and you can develop a rating system inside of that. It makes it really easy. to figure out, hey, we had, 6 out of 10 people hated our solution and pulled their hair out, on the last one. And on this last survey result, those same 10 people, only 1 person was dissatisfied. So we're being able to provide a better experience. And you need that. You need people in good moods. You need people not frustrated. You need people that can be efficient and touch as many people and customers as possible, because a lot of times it's a numbers game, right? The more ups you take, the more opportunities you have to do business. And does the tool allow me to, to spend time to go get more of those opportunities to do business? So each one it's specific to, but I think if you sit down and kind of reflect on it a little bit, you can really come up with a good way to measure the ROI, not just on the dollar amount, but also the experience and the time savings that some of these tools out there can provide.
All right. Chase, how many demos should we see before we make our short list for the committee?
Sometimes just, I would say 1, honestly. If you're making the short list, if you're in the narrowing part of the process, then I think 1's ample. I mean, you can do 2, but I think most of these demos are 30 minutes to an hour and a half, most of them. Maybe some of them go longer, but if you're prepared for that demo, which you should be if you follow these steps, then you'll have a pretty good understanding of through the first one is kind of what does this look like and how does this compare to my list, and I think you'll be able to scratch the surface enough to know whether or not dip a toe, if you will, to know if that's something you want to dive into. But once you narrow, now that's different. Now that's like, hey, okay, it's one of these 2 or it's one of these 3. Then I say, then go all in. Demo until you feel comfortable. Demo until you feel like you understand it. And if there's any, if you're withholding anything of doubt, make sure you get it out pre-sale, because you don't want to do something and then, like I said, be surprised. So maybe 1 to narrow, but when you get into that, past that phase, at least 2, probably 3.
All right. This is a 2-part question. It says, how to handle price increases after the initial setup in reference to your current CRM increasing price. When is it time to pull the plug?
Okay. So if the current CRM you're on is raising prices, then, or whatever, it doesn't even need to be CRM, it could be any tool. You've got to look, if you're measuring, like we talked about just a few minutes ago, the success of that tool, the experience that we're providing with that tool. Are we pulling our hair out? Are we clapping for it? We'll determine, kind of your reaction to this. I don't feel, people are going to raise prices from time to time. It's a tough business to do that in automotive, in my experience. No GM or dealer principal ever loved that conversation. So you really just got to know how well it's doing for you. And a lot of times, maybe that's what you need to start looking. And if you create enough doubt with the vendor, and maybe they'll put it back to the price it was at, but maybe that's enough to get you to look at some other tools and see kind of what's out there. Because you can do the State of the Union every quarter or every month, but I would still recommend that once a year you go look anyway. Because if nothing else, you're going to get a measuring stick to what you're currently using, or at least some new ideas. But spend some time and kind of get familiar with it, even once a year. But that's a tough one to answer. You're just going to have to look at the level of success that you're having, and it's the price increase, worth it based off of the budget that we've allowed and based off what the market bears. So if they're still the price leader and you love them, then stick around. But if they're already the highest one and you're lukewarm and they raise it on you, well, then I'd probably start looking. If nothing else, see what's out there and give you a little bit of a measuring stick.
All right. Should every person in the committee speak to every point or every finalist solution?
That one's specific to the piece of software you're looking at, but the key thing is at the end, at decision time, is to try to get everybody on the same page, or at least let everyone have an opportunity to speak. Because if they're on the committee, then they have something to do with that purchase or that decision. So you don't want to be the guy at the table that didn't get a chance to speak, because what's going to happen in 5 months is they're going to turn that around on you and use it against you when they don't want to use the tool. So it's more about creating depicting that everyone has a say in this, and I'm going to hear from everyone before we make this decision. That's the exact words I would say to start that meeting, because you want everybody to have that feeling, that warm and fuzzy, they're part of the team and that their voice is heard. But specific points, yeah, if you're buying a used car solution, then I'm guessing that the used car manager should probably have the biggest say or the most soapbox time to get up and talk about how this makes sense and which one they want to go with versus the counter arguments if there are any. But the key thing is to let everybody have a voice at the end.
All right. Chase, if we plan to possibly add locations, should we negotiate for this in advance of signing up?
If you wanted to add locations, then I would tell you yes. If you're trying to, and it depends, right? If you're adding one store, then it's going to be hard with some vendors because that's a two-store deal or two-top group, right? So, but if you're buying obviously 10, 11, 30, then yeah. I mean, it depends on the size of the bulk, right? On how many stores are coming on. I do see dealers do that. When I see them add one here, one there, two here, two there, and over 2-3 years sometimes, and then they'll come back and negotiate to try to get a lower rate. That does happen. It just depends on how often you're bringing them in and kind of what's your total count. I will advise you that doing software deals all day, every day for the last 9 years, that if you have a lot of stores, it's always best from the start to bring them all at the same time if possible, because that will get you the biggest or the best deal, if you will.
All right, Chase, I believe that's our last question. I'd like to thank everybody for taking the time to join us today. You can see Chase's contact information up on the screen. Please feel free to reach out to him. Also, do join AutoSuccess webinars and reach out to me through Facebook, or you can email me with Brian with an I, at AutoSuccessOnline.com, and suggest topics you'd like to see in the future or speakers you'd like us to invite. Chase, is there anything else that you'd like to leave with our listeners today?
No, I just want to say thanks again, and thanks for tuning in. AutoSuccess is a great outlet. I read it every month, and I appreciate you guys having me on and let me speak a little bit about this topic that I'm somewhat or fairly passionate about, if you couldn't tell.
Yep. Hey, thank you for coming. I feel like you shared a ton of great information, Chase. We'd love to have you back again. Thank you to everybody else who took the time, and I hope to see you all on a future AutoSuccess webinar. Have a great afternoon.